गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन। मैं रितु पोदार आप सबका स्वागत करती हूँ अल्टीमेट 2024 पैनल डिस्कशन में। इसमें हम आने वाले साल में इक्विटी मार्केट के रोड मैप पर बात करने वाले हैं। 2024 का साल मार्केट के लिए रिमार्केबल रहा है डिस्पाइट फेसिंग challenges like sticky inflation, weaker earning growth, जनरल इलेक्शन रिजल्ट्स और जियोपॉलिटिकल अनसर्टेनिटीज जैसे फैक्टर्स के बावजूद इंडियन स्टॉक मार्केट ने रेजिलियंस दिखाया। और अगर हम रिटर्न्स की बात करें सो की इंडाइसेस ने अराउंड 11% काइंड ऑफ रिटर्न्स जनरेट किए हैं। एंड एट द सेम टाइम अगर हम ब्रॉडर मार्केट की बात करते हैं लाइक मिड कैप एंड स्मॉल कैप, वहां पर हमने अच्छा रिटर्न्स देखा है विच इज अराउंड 27% काइंड ऑफ रिटर्न्स। सो साल की जो शुरुआत हुई थी वो एक अच्छे पॉजिटिव नोट पर हुई थी। गुड इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ, पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी, कॉर्पोरेट अर्निंग्स को लेकर भी काफी एक्साइटमेंट था। लेकिन जैसे जैसे साल आगे बढ़ा स्लोइंग कंज्यूमर डिमांड, म्यूटेड कॉर्पोरेट अर्निंग्स और मार्केट में हमने बहुत सारे आईपीओस देखे। तो ये सारे कंसर्न्स स्लोली एंड स्टडी सामने आए। ग्लोबली भी इंडियन मार्केट्स ने काफी रेजिलियंस दिखाई। यूएस प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शंस, वेस्ट एशिया कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, चाइना के स्टिमुलस मेजर्स को लेकर एंड येन कैरी ट्रेड जैसे हेडविंड्स, इन सब के बावजूद भी इंडियन मार्केट ने काफी अच्छे और स्टडी रहे। तो आज इस पैनल डिस्कशन में हमारे साथ है म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री के 3 स्ट्रेटेजिक विजनरीज, Mr. Vetri Subramaniam, CIO, UTI Asset Management Company, Mr. Harsha Upadhyay, President and CIO, Equity and Fixed Income at Kotak Asset Management Company, and Mr. Trideep Bhattacharya, CIO Equities Edelweiss Mutual Funds. So, सबसे पहले हर्षा, what's the most surprising market trends you have seen in or you have witnessed in 2024?
Good evening. As far as market trends are concerned, I think clearly the surprise has come in the fact that markets have continued to move up despite slowing economy and slowing earnings growth. While we started 2024, as you outlined earlier, things were very, very strong, whether you looked at economic front or at the corporate landscape. I think things were moving quite nicely. And valuations were also not as rich as what we are seeing at this point of time. However, through the year, we have seen a bit of slowdown in the economy, and that has translated into quite a muted earnings trajectory for corporates as well. And despite all of this, we have seen valuations expanding. That's a bit of a surprise, I would say.
So, Vetri sir, do you agree or any other factors which actually you have witnessed in the market in last year, which was surprising factor for you?
I'll not point to one thing as being very surprising, but certainly I think what has come as a surprise has been the continued strength that we have seen in equity markets. और देखिए जब ये साल शुरू हुआ था तब लोगों का ये ऐसा मानना था कि you will not only see big Fed rate cuts this year, it will continue next year करके एक बहुत strong view था. Rate cuts तो आए नहीं. And despite that, global equity markets led by the US have done extremely well. And even an asset class like gold, which typically has a negative relationship with interest rates, even that has done very well. Even something like Bitcoin has done very well. तो अगर आप बॉन्ड्स को छोड़ेंगे तो बॉन्ड्स को छोड़ के बाकी सब एसेट क्लास ने काफी अच्छा रिटर्न दिया है. और मैं मानता हूं कि दिस इज अ स्लाइटली अनयूजुअल सिचुएशन कि इतने सारे रिस्क असेट्स में आपको एक इतना अच्छा रिटर्न मिला है इस साल.
Trideep sir, for you, any specific factor which you have witnessed?
I agree with all my distinguished panelists what they said, but जो मुझे surprise किया, that was a bit of a disruption within consumers. I think the change that quick commerce is bringing about in urban consumption, ये at least साल के शुरू में मैंने उतने हद तक एंटिसिपेट नहीं किया था जितने हद तक चीजें जितनी तेजी से चीजें बढ़ी हैं. But that is a very sector specific observation. But उसको छोड़ करके, I think this was a year of, in many ways, political sort of change of style. We saw a transition from Modi 2.0 to 3.0. We are also grappling with, from Modi 3.0 to Trump 2.0. So political gamut में इतनी बड़ी changes हुई, which I think clouded the earnings sort of outlook in such a way. So इतने हद तक dominate करेगा ये मैंने नहीं सोचा था. So those would be the two, the macro dominance of markets in terms of news flow, and secondly the disruption in certain sectors, like consumption बोल लीजिए या फिर pains. That was probably a little bit higher than anticipated.
So, Trideep sir, here you have talked about consumption as a sector, like Harsha, what's your thought on consumption as a whole sector? So, going forward, if you talk about the urban consumption and the rural consumption, so any thought on this?
Ritu, clearly consumption continues to be quite patchy. Up until now, most of the urban-centric discretionary consumption trends were quite strong, which was definitely a positive. But of late, we have seen some of those also weakening a bit. For example, the passenger vehicle industry is seeing a sort of a demand slowdown. Some of the white goods sales also have not been up to the same rate that we were seeing in the past. Along with that, the expected revival in rural market has also not come through. So overall, I would say that consumption still continues to be a mixed bag. If you look at rural segment and the mass consumption, clearly that has not picked up at all. While still there is hope that maybe this agricultural season being very strong and the next one is also likely to be quite robust, you are likely to see some bit of recovery over the next 2 to 3 quarters in rural consumption, hopefully. However, the trends that we have seen on the urban consumption side have not held up all through the year. There was a hope that the festive season is going to be even better for consumption in the urban areas, but that has not happened completely, I would say. So I would say it's been a patchy trend up until now and is likely to be similar for the next couple of quarters until we see clear turnaround in the rural markets.
So, Vetri, any kind of specific segments in rural segment you see जहाँ पर हम 2025 में तेजी देख सकते हैं?
देखिए, जैसे कि आपने पहले भी बोला, आपने इंट्रोडक्शन में बोला था विजनरी. मैं तो ये मानता हूँ कि देखिए, इन्वेस्टिंग में विजनरी तो बहुत सारे आके गए, लेकिन जो इन्वेस्टिंग में ज़्यादा देर टिके रहते हैं, वो लोग हैं जो गलती कम करते हैं. तो आई टेंड नॉट टू बिलीव टू मच इन फोरकास्ट. खुद के फोरकास्ट या किसी और के फोरकास्ट पे भी भरोसा कम डालता हूँ और ज़्यादातर फोकस करता हूँ कि जहाँ पे वैल्यूएशन सही है, वहाँ पे मतलब कि फोरकास्ट का रिस्क भी थोड़ा कम हो जाता है. तो उस हिसाब से देखेंगे कि आज का मार्केट तो इज अ वेरी चैलेंजिंग मार्केट, बिकॉज काफी सारे सेक्टर्स में एक्चुअली वैल्यूएशंस आर क्वाइट चैलेंजिंग. I think the one sector where I have some degree of comfort in terms of valuation, definitely banking and finance. वहाँ पे of course there are certain challenges that the sector is facing, but because of those challenges you are getting cheap valuations. So this is the one sector where I feel very positive in terms of the prospects over the next 1 year. But again, it's not so much a forecast कि अगले एक साल में ही रिटर्न आएगा, but relative to the market, I think this is a sector where there is scope for absolute returns over a 2 to 3 year period. Second thing I would say is that ये पिछले 1-2 साल में जो हमने मिड कैप्स और स्मॉल कैप्स में वैल्यूएशन देखे हैं, they have tended actually to go to a premium to large caps. So when I actually look more carefully at the large cap space, there are some pockets of opportunity over there, but those are more bottom up. Sector के हिसाब से it is very difficult to call out, but at a stock level there are some more opportunities which are visible there as compared to elsewhere.
Okay. So, as you talked about valuation and banking in financial sector, so Pradeep, can you see any sector which is, I mean, at this moment, which we can look for from the valuation prospects?
देखिए, valuations and growth hand in hand. Some of the stocks which are cheap for a reason, and some of the stocks which are expensive, maybe outrageously expensive. I think the moot point of investing is to find that quiescent point where valuations are reasonable in the context of growth that we are likely to see going forward, and in terms of how it might work out. So one such area is probably real estate. Builders have probably or let me put it this way, real estate को अगर आप दो भागों में divide करें, एक direct real estate which is the builders, and second the ancillary sectors which kind of participate like pipes, tiles, sanitary ware, etc. So while builders have done well, the ancillary sectors within real estate, they haven't done, and their valuations certainly are reasonable. और अगर आप उसका मीडियम टर्म आउटलुक देखें, तो आउटलुक इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ ग्रोथ is also reasonably positive. So वो एक एरिया ऐसा है, इट्स अ निश, बट जहां के मुझे लगता है कि वैल्यूएशन रीजनेबल है, और अगर थोड़ा सा एक दो साल का ग्रोथ प्रोस्पेक्ट्स देखें तो थोड़ा टर्न अराउंड होने के चांसेस भी हैं.
Oh, interesting. Tradeep, so real estate on a mostly on an ancillary side, you are looking positive, or you are giving a positive outlook for a medium term point of view. Harsha, what's your view on a IT as a sector? Because earlier we have seen, like, if we see the commentaries, and also we have seen, like, last couple of quarters we have seen a good commentary from the companies. So what's your what would be your stance on this sector?
Ritu, we have turned a little more positive on IT over the last couple of quarters. A couple of things that are making us turn a little more positive on the sector would be, one, clearly the kind of business momentum loss that we had seen in IT sector, wherein post-COVID we had seen a very large ramp up across IT discretionary spend, and that seemed to lose steam sometime in 2023 and the part of 24. That seems to be turning around now, although early days, but we believe that BFSI and a few other verticals should start seeing a return of discretionary spend. So that augurs well for Indian IT services. That's more of a cyclical upturn in discretionary spend. Apart from this, we are also hopeful of American policy changing on the corporate taxation. If that happens, then I think that will give a lot of ammunition for American corporations to actually go and spend on increasing their efficiency. That should also be very positive for IT spend, and it could be much higher than what everyone has anticipated until now. The third factor is, as everyone is looking at AI adoption, while it is still not clear who is going to win and which kind of IT services company will emerge winner, etc. But one thing is sure, that before you do that, you need to migrate all your databases on the cloud, and that cloud migration efforts will be serviced by many of our IT services companies in India. So I think clearly from a medium term perspective, that also remains a very large opportunity. And at this point of time, when markets are volatile, where earnings are not likely to really show any significant strength, this seems to be a sector where at least there is some expected turnaround in the very short term, as well as some positives in the medium term. And also, this is not a leverage sector, so to that extent, it'll probably remain defensive. Although I should admit that the current IT sector valuations are nowhere close to the historical valuations of IT companies, where generally it tended to be more defensive. But still, I think in the overall context of the market, it can remain a little more defensive than other sectors.
So Harsha, in the same IT sector, whether it's a, I mean, more pockets are in a large cap space or mid cap or a small cap, we can figure it out.
Currently, we have invested across almost all of the market capitalizations within IT sector. However, from a valuation perspective, there is more comfort on the large cap side, where valuations have not really seen that kind of an elevated levels. Mid cap IT clearly is in an expensive zone. None of the stocks there seem to be attractive from a valuation perspective anymore.
Okay. So, Vetri, you have spoken about banking and financial services is one of the segment or sector where we can look for, and in this particular space, if we talk about a capital market where we all are working, so what's your view on the capital market? Because often we are seeing a lot many offerings on that side.
Yeah, I'm very positive on the sort of growth potential of the businesses which are linked to capital markets over the next many years. लेकिन जो आज के स्टार्टिंग वैल्यूएशंस हैं, ऑनेस्टली फ्रॉम दीज लेवल्स आई डोंट गेट वेरी ग्रेट कंफर्ट. ये जो हिस्ट्री का एक लेसन है इज दैट capital market businesses by definition are a lot more cyclical. Of course, you can find few businesses which have a slightly lower cyclical component. Maybe they have larger annuity businesses. But the nature of the business is that it goes through cycles because capital markets have cycles. So, from that point of view, I would actually feel more comfortable in the core banking space rather than in the capital marketplace. क्योंकि उनका जो business model है, those might be strong, लेकिन जो underlying business है, that is prone to very very strong cycles.
Great. So, Trideep, if you can help us, because every market we see whenever the correction comes, and we see sectoral shift in the themes or the sectoral sectors happen. आने वाले समय में आपको कुछ ऐसा दिख रहा है जहां पर हम कुछ सेक्टोरल शिफ्ट्स देख सकते हैं?
जी सो अगर आप 3-4 साल पहले चले जाएं, सो पहले एक जमाने में कंजम्पशन काफी स्ट्रांग होता था. पिछले 2-3 साल में हमने कैपिटल गुड्स एज अ सेक्टर का स्ट्रेंथ देखा. लेकिन अगर आप FY25 में देखें, because there was kind of a policy paralysis, if you could call it that way, or maybe because of elections and change of can't say, I mean, basically new government in its new term coming over, थोड़ा सा डिसीजन मेकिंग में पैरालिसिस देखने को मिला. इसलिए FY25 में कैपिटल गुड्स ओवरऑल इनिशियली चले, लेकिन उसके बाद काफी एक लंबा चौड़ा करेक्शन देखने को मिला. मुझे लगता है कुछ हद तक FY26 जो हमारा अगला साल रहेगा, उसमें आपको कुछ हद तक कैपिटल गुड्स एज अ सेक्टर वापस आने दिखेगा. उसमें गवर्नमेंट डिसीजन मेकिंग भी कुछ हद तक वापस आएगी और प्राइवेट सेक्टर कैपेक्स भी आने की बात है. सो उसका एक बेनिफिशियल वो एक सेक्टोरल शिफ्ट होगा ईयर ऑन ईयर ओवरऑल. दूसरा मुझे लगता है कि ये जो कंपोनेंट स्पेस है, EMS स्पेस है, ये एक अंडर एक्सप्लोर्ड स्पेस है इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द नंबर ऑफ प्लेयर्स दैट आर लिस्टेड और एंड द अपॉर्चुनिटीज दैट आर कमिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ इंडिया एज अ कंट्री. मुझे लगता है कि आगे 1-2 साल में आपको ये सेक्टर मुझे लगता है कि बड़ा होता दिखता है. इंडेक्सेस में इनका रिप्रेजेंटेशन अभी कम है. ओवर द नेक्स्ट कपल ऑफ इयर्स ये बड़ा हो सकता है. सो दैट इज समथिंग एज ए नेसेंट सेक्टर जो हमें मुझे लगता है कि अगले 1-2 साल में बड़ा होगा. तीसरा जो सेक्टर और सेक्टोरल शिफ्ट मुझे देखने को मिलता है वो है कंजम्पशन में. एज आई टॉक्ड अबाउट अ बिट ऑफ डिसरप्शन which is going on driven by quick commerce. मुझे लगता है अर्बन कंजम्पशन में आपको एक कैटेगरी देखने को मिलेगा which is driven by quick commerce, and if the players can make it a money proposition, i.e. the cash flow can be positive in that segment, I think वो एक बड़ा segment होगा. It has the potential to disrupt traditional retail. Of course we will see to what extent. लेकिन इसमें कुछ बड़े प्लेयर्स जब एंट्री करेंगे तब अगले साल एक डायनामिक इंटरेस्टिंग हो सकता है अर्बन कंजम्पशन के अंदर में. तो ये 3 ट्रेंड्स मुझे दिखते हैं ओवरऑल, जहाँ की सेक्टोरल ट्रेंड्स चेंज हो सकते हैं या बहुत स्ट्रांग हो सकते हैं.
So, Vetri, आपका क्या व्यू रहेगा? Any kind of a sectoral shift do you see in 2025 and going ahead?
Um, देखिए, ये तो सेक्टोरल रोटेशन होते रहता है। मेरा तो मानना ये है कि देखिए, जो लोग इन्वेस्ट करते हैं उनका ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है, विच इज टू सॉर्ट ऑफ अलाउ योर कैपिटल टू कंपाउंड ओवर लॉन्ग पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम। उसके लिए तो मैं मानता हूँ कि एक्चुअली द बेस्ट इज टू गो विद डाइवर्सिफाइड पोर्टफोलियोज। हाँ, कभी कभी आपको एक मौका मिलेगा, एटलीस्ट इन माय बुक, जहाँ पे आपको एक वैल्यूएशन भी अट्रैक्टिव मिल रहे हैं और वहाँ पे शायद मीडियम टर्म ग्रोथ प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स भी अट्रैक्टिव हैं, तो हाँ, आप वो खरीद सकते हैं आपके डाइवर्सिफाइड पोर्टफोलियो के ऊपर। लेकिन अगर आप सिर्फ सेक्टोरल ट्रेंड्स के पीछे भाग रहे हैं ऑन एनुअल बेसिस, तो दिस विल नॉट बी अ गुड वे टू इन्वेस्ट। सो एक्चुअली इफ आई कैन मेक अ रिकमेंडेशन, मेरा तो यही रिकमेंडेशन रहेगा सबका कि एक तो आप डाइवर्सिफाइड फंड में जाइए, और दूसरा ये रहेगा कि आज का जो एक वैल्यूएशन का माहौल है, उसमें एक्चुअली हाइब्रिड स्ट्रेटजीज एंड एसेट एलोकेशन स्ट्रेटजीज मेक इवन more sense for investors, because there is richness in some pockets of the equity market, और fixed income में आपको एक reasonable carry तो मिल रहा है। तो the hybrid fund is actually a very good product for investors to consider in the current environment.
So, Vetri, to asking these sectoral questions, the reason is very simple because last 2024 we have seen a very strong flows in sectoral and thematic funds in mutual fund industry, and that is the question. Harsha, can you, if you can help us to understand, are they need of us or the investors' point of view, or they can build a core portfolio because the kind of a flows we have seen in 2024 that was pretty strong.
Ritu, every investor is different. Everyone's needs could be different. So I don't think we can generalize and say that these are required and these are not required. But clearly, the thematic funds or the sectoral funds don't have the same flexibility as diversified funds. For example, if I'm managing a diversified fund and if I find a business not going through a great time or some headwinds coming up over the next few quarters, etc., I may reduce that stock or I may exit that stock. Similarly, if a particular sector is very, very expensive, I may exit that sector and get into some other relatively better sector, right? However, if I am managing a single sector fund or a multi-sector thematic scheme, that flexibility doesn't usually exist. Even if the sector is very expensive, we will have to keep most of our investments in the same theme, same sector. If there are regulatory issues, if there are headwinds coming up, even then we can't really move out of those themes or sectors completely. So, given all of this, thematic funds always carry higher risk compared to diversified funds. Only informed investors should be looking at that. And it all depends on your investment horizon and your risk appetite. The entry and exit points have to be really, really good in case of thematic funds to really make large amounts of money. Otherwise, for most regular investors, I would say diversified funds would be a better route to really choose.
Very correctly said Harsha. Like when you are entering in any kind of a sector, so definitely entry and exit both make sense because आप सिर्फ enter कर रहे हैं और if you are not exiting because every sector has a cycle. So surely that is one learning for our investors. Uh, uh, Again, if I'll come back on the or we'll talk about the market capitalization segments like large cap, small cap, and mid cap. Which segment do you see as of now the comfort is, or we can see the portfolios would be tilted towards? Trideep, can you help?
श्योर सो मेरा मानना यह है कि ये जो मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन बेस्ड डिसीजन मेकिंग है ये थोड़ा सा मैं इसमें बहुत ज्यादा बिलीव नहीं करता हूँ। मेरा मानना यह है कि कुछ सेक्टर्स में द नंबर वन कंपनी द सेक्टर लीडर इज इन मिड कैप, इन सम सेक्टर द सेक्टर लीडर इज इन स्मॉल कैप, तो उसको आप एक कैटेगराइजेशन तरीके से अगर आप देखते हैं it's a bit racist in the way to think about it. Obviously, in an aggregate, अगर आप large cap valuations देखें, large cap valuations are comfortable, mid and small caps are expensive, लेकिन mid and small cap में थोड़ा growth भी ज्यादा है। तो मेरे ख्याल में इसको bottom up तरीके से देखना चाहिए। मेरे ख्याल से अगर आप अगले साल और अगले 2-3 साल के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बोल रहे हैं, सो एग्जीक्यूशन इंजिन्स को मैं जनरली फोकस करता हूं कि जिनका जिस बिजनेसेस का एग्जीक्यूशन बेहतर हो उस वहाँ in each sector, those would be my preferred picks in the context of the sector rather than in market capitalization. So मेरा मानना ये है कि it should be a mixed portfolio across all the three, जहाँ की valuation versus growth conundrum को balance किया जा सके और जहाँ पे execution strong हो वहाँ पे bet करना चाहिए. So unfortunately, that would be my answer to your question, which may not exactly answer what you are looking for, but that's the way I look at it.
Okay. So, Vetri sir, if we'll talk about, 2025 would be a more on the market capitalization based, or it would be a more on the bottom up approach kind of a market.
अगर आप 2025 के बारे में बात करेंगे, आई वुड से देखिए, हमेशा आपको एक रेफरेंस टू कॉन्टेक्स्ट करना पड़ता है, एंड माय रेफरेंस टू कॉन्टेक्स्ट इन द करंट एनवायरनमेंट इज कि जब भी वैल्यूएशंस ऊपर चले जाते हैं, दैट इज द टाइम आपको अपना रिस्क टेकिंग जो इंक्लिनेशन है उसको कम करना चाहिए. तो आई एम मोर कंसर्न्ड इन द करंट मार्केट अबाउट बिजनेसेस विच आर रनिंग ओनली ऑन हाइप, which are running only on the prospects of what they can do over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in terms of growth. लेकिन कंपनीज के या तो कैश फ्लोज नहीं है, या तो रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी नहीं है, और या उनके पूरे स्टोरीज कैपिटल मार्केट के easy equity money के ऊपर निर्भर है. तो I would say this is the environment in which you should be more careful about the quality of companies you pick. I think Trideep made some excellent points over there. But just in terms of that bottom-up selection, I would say this is the environment in which you need to emphasize quality of the business. This is the kind of environment in which you need to beware of hype over अगले 10 साल में ये हो सकता है, अगले 20 साल में ये हो सकता है. आप बिजनेस के फंडामेंटल्स के ऊपर जाइए, आगे के कहानी के ऊपर पे नहीं जाइए.
Great points put up, Vetri. हर्षा, यहाँ पर अगर हम because last 2 या 3 साल में if we talk about, then we have seen a value as a segment actually, or a strategy has performed quite well. And today, I mean, just now Vetri said that in this market हमको ज़्यादा focus करना चाहिए quality पे, कि कंपनीज के क्वालिटी कैसे हैं, आने वाले समय में how they are going to perform. So, as a theme or as a strategy, can we say that quality oriented funds or quality oriented portfolios would deliver better return than the value as a theme?
Ritu, again, it will be generalizing to a large extent if we say that, because quality at what price is also very important. So I think if quality portfolio is there which has not paid overvaluation, then I think that should work well in this volatile time period. But if it is a quality portfolio which has given very high multiples to the businesses, then I don't know whether those high multiples will sustain if there is a slowdown in earnings, or if there is volatility caused by external factors in the market, etc. So I think it's better to focus on each of the individual companies and then construct a portfolio, rather than trying to say that this theme is going to be better than another theme, and go top down. That would be my approach. But yes, overall, I think the fundamental comfort has to be there, and that's going to become more important compared to previous few years now, given that valuations are on the higher side, and there is not much room for really complacency at this point of time.
Okay. Okay. So, Vetri, if we talk about global triggers, so headwinds or tailwinds for India, what would be?
When you talk about global factors, मैं मानता हूँ कि there are two kinds of global factors. One is the more sort of geopolitical factors, और जो geopolitical factors हैं, ये तो बहुत साल के बाद मैंने ऐसा situation देखा है जहाँ पे I would say for some time now, India has actually been very well placed as far as geopolitical factors are concerned. जब आप economics की तरफ देखते हैं, तो there is a little bit of a challenge. Challenge ये है कि actually there are only, I would say, two countries in the world, large economies in the world, which are growing very well. One is the US, second is India, right? And India is obviously growing faster. But बाकी सारे economies में जब आप देखते हैं, तो they are all facing extreme growth challenges. इसमें हमको ऐसा सोचना पड़ेगा कि व्हेन वी थिंक अबाउट आवर ग्रोथ एस्पिरेशंस, सिर्फ अगली साल के बारे में नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, आई एम टॉकिंग ओवर द नेक्स्ट 5 years, 10 years. It will be easier for India to grow faster when the whole world is doing better, because then we can piggyback on the back of global strength. But it becomes very difficult when large parts of the world are facing their own internal challenges. So I think that is the context in which I would say that we have to be slightly more cautious about our growth expectations going to the top end. जो हमारा एक aspiration है 8% grow करने का, to become a developed economy by 2047, ये achievable है. But it is easier to achieve it when the world is supportive. Today the world is not supportive, लेकिन ये एक 20 साल का रास्ता है. So we cannot get too disheartened by what we see in the world at this point of time. But ये हमें एक याद रखना चाहिए that our geopolitics is well positioned, but the global economy is not sending very great signals, and that creates its own challenges.
Okay, so Trideep, do you see the new government in US, or there are a lot many news about that, is going forward is going to impact on India?
मेरे हिसाब से ट्रम्प इज ट्रूली द ट्रम्प कार्ड फॉर 2025. वो किसके फेवर में खुलेगा, वी नीड टू सी. जोक्स अपार्ट, आई थिंक ओवरऑल जो वाइल उनके जो स्पेसिफिक पॉलिसीज हैं वो हमें नहीं मालूम है, लेकिन एक दो चीजें तो काफी क्लियर हैं. वो ये है कि शायद अगले एक दो साल में वी माइट बी हेडिंग टूवर्ड्स ए स्ट्रॉन्गर डॉलर regime. So that in itself is a headwind. तो उसमें केवल हमें ही नहीं, सारे इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स को एक हेडविन रहेगा, क्योंकि कंपनीज विल हैव टू रन व्हाइल दे बिकम एक्सपोर्ट कॉम्पिटिटिव, पर उनका एक फ्लोस में एक अपना
So, Vetri, I would suggest, I think he got disconnected. So I'll just ask you the same question. On the Trump side, Trump का कार्ड किसके फेवर में खुलेगा? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I mean, प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प के बारे में किसी को कुछ सर्टेनिटी नहीं है कि वो किस सुबह उठ के किस चीज के बारे में ट्वीट करेंगे, किस चीज के बारे पॉलिसी के बारे में बात करेंगे. तो आई थिंक द ओनली थिंग वी कैन से इज दैट प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प इज लाइकली टू कंट्रीब्यूट टू अ लॉट मोर वॉलेटिलिटी इन द ईयर अहेड. आई थिंक वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट द होल वर्ल्ड विल हैव टू डील विद, ये एक चैलेंज है कि he continuously talks of wanting a balanced trade account, or most of the large economies in the world have a surplus in their favor vis-a-vis the US. इसमें एक अच्छी बात यह है कि जो अगर आप कंट्रीज को रैंक करेंगे तो हम एटलीस्ट टॉप 5 में नहीं फिगर होंगे ऑन गुड्स बेसिस. वी विल बी समवेयर एट द बॉटम ऑफ द टॉप 10. So hopefully he will be more busy, looking at what deals he can do with the countries at the top of the list before he reaches us and starts to discuss what can be done with India. But I think you have to just be prepared for a lot more volatility. You have to be prepared for a lot more transactional decisions in trade relations with the US rather than longer term strategy. But one thing is very clear: the support for India as a country from a geopolitical standpoint, it cuts across both political parties in the US, be it Republican or be it Democratic. तो इसलिए मैं ये बोलूंगा कि eventually from a geopolitical standpoint, India has one advantage. We are still seen as a friend and an ally of the US, and that is something we will have to continuously use to our advantage.
Okay, so Harsha, at the same time, if we talk about the India versus China, so China, we have seen the stimulus package, and we have seen few FIIs took away to move to China because of the valuation and because of the different factors. So, can you just help us going forward? Can we see that trend?
Ritu, a few months back, the valuations of India vis-a-vis China were very, very divergent. I would say we were clearly very expensive. We have always been expensive compared to emerging markets, but the the disparity between Chinese valuations and our valuations were at the extreme couple of months back, and that is when there were policy measures that were taken up in China, which fueled a rally there, and the market has moved up quite substantially there. And we have also seen some bit of a decline in our markets during the same period or around the same period. So now the valuation gap doesn't seem to be so exaggerated. I would say that's point number one. Second, still we are unsure whether some of the policy decisions that are being taken at Chinese economy, whether they are going to really lead to a long-term sustainable turnaround in their growth trajectory or not. And from a longer term perspective, I think it will always be difficult to ignore a market which is as big as India and which has been growing at quite healthy levels. So, from a short term perspective, maybe that trade of some money out of EMs moving into China may have already played out. In the medium to long term, everyone will wait for some more evidence in terms of whether Chinese economy has really started to become stronger, etc. So if we don't find those evidences, then there is a chance that the money may come back to other emerging markets, or incremental money may not go there. And also, we should get a fair share of emerging market flows over the next few years. Really difficult to make a point whether it's going to come in the next 3 months, 6 months, etc. But if you really look at next 5 years, for example, there is no reason to believe that India should be getting lesser flows than what it used to get in the past 5 years, simply because in the emerging markets now we are second only to China in terms of the weightage at around 20%. So that's a large weight, and nobody could really avoid taking exposure to India. But yes, valuations will also come into picture once in a while, like what they have are done now. Because of the expensiveness, probably people will prefer other markets from time to time, but the long term money will still look at India as a favorable destination, I would say.
Okay. So, Pradeep, here the question is India and emerging market, will it lead the pack in an upcoming year?
So मेरे ख्याल में मैं वैसे से ताजुब रखता हूँ when we said that actually if you look at the two economies which are really growing well is US and India. और उसमें मैं एक और पॉइंट ऐड करूंगा कि ग्रोथ तो फिर भी सिक्लिकल इकोनॉमीज में भी होती है, लेकिन जो हमारी प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी, जो हमारे रिटर्न रेशियोज हैं, वो काफी इकोनॉमीज के तुलना में बेहतर हैं.
I think we have missed
Maybe
his.
Ritu, I'll just add over there. I think we have
Yes,
lost Tridip, but just to
yes.
add over there, देखिए चाइना पे आई completely agree with what हर्षा is saying. लेकिन मैं ये भी मानता हूँ कि हमारा जो ये एक प्रिज्म है चाइना को देखने का, ये थोड़ा गलत है. देखिए दिस इज नॉट अ जीरो सम गेम इन विच वी आर वरिड अबाउट अरे एफपीआई वहां पे चले गए तो हमारे कंट्री से पैसा बाहर निकालेंगे. देखिए ये एक $20 ट्रिलियन का इकोनॉमी है, हम $4 ट्रिलियन की इकोनॉमी है, यूएस इज अ $30 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी. If a $20 trillion economy starts growing at a healthy pace, maybe because they rebalance their economy towards domestic consumption, ये पूरे वर्ल्ड के लिए एक अच्छा आउटकम है. And the opportunities for growth for Indian companies, Indian businesses also will improve because China will be able to then meet some of its own growth aspirations locally. तो जब आप ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के बारे में बात करते हैं, मेरा तो ये मानना है कि इंडिया इज बेटर इन अ सिचुएशन वेयर मेनी ग्लोबल इकोनॉमीज आर डूइंग वेल, रादर देन इन अ सिचुएशन कि हमें लगता है कि नहीं हमारा इकोनॉमी सिर्फ तब अच्छा करेगा करेगा जब किसी और का इकोनॉमी अच्छा नहीं कर रहा है. ये एक जीरो सम मेंटालिटी है जो स्टॉक मार्केट फ्लोज के बारे में आप बात कर सकते हैं, लेकिन इकोनॉमिक आउटपुट के बारे में जब आप सोचते हैं तो वी आर ऑलवेज बेटर ऑफ व्हेन द होल वर्ल्ड इज ग्रोइंग वेल. प्लीज गो बैक एंड लर्न फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री. जब आप 2002 और 2010 के बारे में आप इंडिया का ग्रोथ रेट देखेंगे, व्हेन वी वर अचीविंग 8%, इनफैक्ट वेल अबव 8% फॉर अ लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, द होल वर्ल्ड वाज ग्रोइंग, सब सहारन अफ्रीका वाज ग्रोइंग, इवन चाइना वाज ग्रोइंग. तो आई थिंक ये हमारा एक पर्सपेक्टिव ठीक रखना पड़ेगा कि आपको क्या चाहिए. आपको सिर्फ इक्विटी के बारे में मार्केट में एक प्राइस साइकिल चाहिए, कि आप ऐसे सोच रहे हैं कि इंडिया का जो पर कैपिटा इनकम है वो $3,000 से $12,000 करना है, तो वो किस एनवायरनमेंट में हो सकता है? वो ऐसे ही एक एनवायरनमेंट में हो सकता है जहां पे पूरा वर्ल्ड हमें एक सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट की तरफ से एक अपॉर्चुनिटी देगा पिगी बैक करने के लिए ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के ऊपर।
सो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग पर्सपेक्टिव वेट्री आपने दिया यहाँ पर कि अक्रॉस ग्लोब वी डू वेल, देन प्रोबेबली इंडिया इज अ बेटर ऑफ पोजीशन एंड इंडिया कैन डू मच बेटर। यहाँ पर रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स का जो हमने पार्टिसिपेशन देखा है इन लास्ट कपल ऑफ इयर्स, what's your view, Harsha, whether it's a structural kind of incremental retail investors we are seeing, or these are like just because last 2 3 years market had given an excellent return. So what's your opinion on that?
Ritu, definitely the current state of markets where returns have been very strong for equities may have been a reason, but I think what we are seeing is also structural. I mean, we have seen SIP numbers growing steadily over the last 3 4 years. Even before that, it was growing, but I am saying we have not really seen any different trend in the recent times. We have seen number of demat holders increasing consistently over the last few years, although that pace has increased in the recent times, but it has been growing. And what we are looking at even now is very small percentage of investable population coming into equities or coming into mutual funds. I think there is a long way to go in that sense. But just like every other trend, this could also have its own cycles. We have not seen those cycles in the last 4 years at least. Uh, if markets were to take a breather, some of these investors may get a little bit jittery. If they are not really long-term investors, they may feel a little bit of nervousness. And then it needs to be seen whether all of those investors will continue to stick to their discipline or continue to invest into equities, etc. But by and large, I think this is a structural change that we have seen, and a significant part of the current change should continue even into the future.
Okay. So, Vetri, for the retail investors, is this the time when they should reset their return expectation? Because if you talk the clients, mostly everyone expectation is a 25, 30, 40% kind of a thing. So, is this the time where they can learn some lesson in 2025?
सर्टेनली ऋतु, आई थिंक देखिए, ये जो एक इकोनॉमी का नॉमिनल ग्रोथ है आजकल, तो हम 10-11% के बारे में बात करते हैं। तो जब आप किसी फाइनेंशियल प्लानिंग अपने गोल के हिसाब से बनाते हैं, तो यू शुड नॉट बजट फॉर मोर देन 12% रिटर्न ओवर अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, बिकॉज 25-30% मतलब कि द वेल्थ विल कंपाउंड मच मच फास्टर देन व्हाट द अंडरलाइंग इकोनॉमी इज ग्रोइंग। दैट इज नॉट पॉसिबल। इवेंचुअली market cap is a function to is a slave to the growth in corporate earnings, and earnings cannot explode at that pace over a very long period of time. The only way market cap can do that if starting valuations are extremely cheap, but that is not the case today. So I would say certainly unko apna expectations jo hai, they need to be moderated. You cannot work with 25 to 30% expectations on a sustained basis in terms of your financial goals. But I just want to leave one more thought with people. देखिए, आई एम वेरी, अगर आप 10 साल पहले हर्षा या मुझसे ये पूछते थे कि विल दिस इकोनॉमी ग्रो 7 times in 10 years, ये तो हम सोच भी नहीं सकते थे यार। आई एम डिलाइटेड टू सी द ग्रोथ दैट वी हैव सीन इन द इंडस्ट्री। म्यूचुअल फंड सही है, people have come to understand that message so well, so I'm delighted to see that. But I will still leave one message to investors कि ये जो एक इक्विटी मार्केट है, यहाँ पे ऐसा आपको सोचना चाहिए कि आप कहां से पैसा कमाते हैं, उसमें से आप कुछ बचत कीजिए, सेविंग्स कीजिए। सेविंग्स को आप इक्विटीज में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए, जहां से इट विल कंपाउंड ओवर टाइम एंड क्रिएट वेल्थ फॉर यू टू अचीव योर गोल्स ओवर 20 years. लेकिन increasingly when I talk to many people, I'm not saying all investors, but many investors, उनको इक्विटी मार्केट अभी एक एटीएम मशीन जैसे दिखती है कि जहां पे आप आके वहां से आप इनकम कमा सकते हैं कि आज आपने पैसा डाला, 3 महीने में ये हो गया, मैंने आईपीओ में डाला, वो 1 महीने में इतना हो गया, तो मैंने निकाल दिया और फैमिली के साथ में डिनर पे गया। देखिए, इक्विटी मार्केट इज नॉट अ प्लेस फ्रॉम विच यू कैन अर्न इनकम, बट इट इज अ ब्रिलियंट प्लेस फ्रॉम विच यू कैन कंपाउंड योर वेल्थ ओवर लॉन्ग पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम। तो आप उस माइंडसेट से आइए कि मेरा जो हार्ड अर्न सेविंग्स है वो मैं यहाँ पे एक डिसिप्लिन तरीके से इन्वेस्ट करूंगा, मैं उसको टाइम दूंगा, क्योंकि जो कंपाउंडिंग का इक्वेशन है उसमें सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है एन, नंबर ऑफ ईयर्स। लोग पूरा फोकस देखते हैं आर के ऊपर, मतलब रेट ऑफ रिटर्न, लेकिन एक्चुअली द ट्रिक फॉर कंपाउंडिंग ओवर लॉन्ग पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम इज एन, नॉट आर। तो दैट इज व्हाट आई वुड से, इक्विटी मार्केट्स को आप सेविंग्स का एक रेजिडेंस समझिए विच कैन कंपाउंड ओवर लॉन्ग टाइम। एटीएम मशीन मत सोचिए कि यहाँ पे मैं हर महीना कुछ कमा सकता हूँ जिससे मेरा घर चल सकता है।
बहुत ही अच्छी बात बोली वैक्ट्री। अगर हम एमफी का डेटा भी देखते हैं तो वहां पर हम देख सकते हैं बहुत क्लियरली है, लाइक वेरी फ्यू इन्वेस्टर्स, लाइक 20-30% ओनली काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स होल्ड देयर एसेट्स फॉर अ मोर देन 3 years or 5 years. So mostly investors, withdraw their funds in a 2 years kind of a time horizon. Uh, Harsha, next year, if we talk about which categories among equities, do you see where investors can build their core portfolio? At the same time, if they would like to add, some kind of a satellite funds in their portfolio, what would be your recommendation to them?
For most regular investors, I would say a diversified approach is the better approach. We discussed about it earlier in the show. So clearly, diversified equity funds with given the context of higher valuations across the board and also relative valuations of mid caps and small caps being at elevated levels compared to their own history as well as large caps, I would say a larger proportion should be in large cap stocks and maybe some proportion in mid and small caps. So any fund which offers a tilt towards large caps is a better selection at this point of time. And clearly, one should not be coming in for 2025 alone or next 6 months alone. Equities are generally for long-term investing, and you should keep that in mind and build a portfolio for next 5-10 years and keep monitoring it every now and then.
Okay. So, Vetri, one question to you, like quant-based strategy. In the last couple of years, we have seen India actually, lot many quant-based strategies are coming. Uh, are they good in India's evolving market landscape? Because if we see the data, we are not having very high quality kind of a data, and historically not as long as historical data like US and other countries we can get.
Sure. I would just say that quant funds are another method of investing. And if they are able to integrate the best of fundamental research with certain quantitative processes, then it is another sort of product that investors can consider in their sort of scheme of things. Even within quantitative, you have different products. Some are completely quant driven, but they could be passive. Some could be quant with active management. So I just think of quant as another method of investing, another style of investing. Just as there is value, there is growth, there is growth at a reasonable price. Somebody says quality. Quant is just another approach, and it is a approach that some people can consider based on their own suitability for that. I just consider it as another process. मतलब कि आप रेस्टोरेंट में जाएंगे तो वहां पे मतलब पिज्जा भी मिलेगा, बर्गर भी मिलेगा, पास्ता भी मिलेगा, चाइनीज भी मिलता है. This is another way to sort of achieve those goals. But yes, you should make sure that what you get at the end of the day, to go back to what Harsha said, is whatever that method should be, I hope it gives you a diversified portfolio.
So Vetri, here I would agree with you. Like ठीक है, आपको पिज्जा बर्गर मिलेगा, बट अगर पिज्जा में आपको 10 वैरायटी मिलेंगी, वहां पर प्रॉब्लम होता है इन्वेस्टर्स को टू opt for. Harsha, AI is a new tool in India, and I mean, we are hearing a lot about that. Being a fund manager, आपको लगता है ये कहीं न कहीं आई मीन आपको कैसे किस हद तक और कहाँ तक आपको आपके फंड मैनेजमेंट में ये हेल्प कर सकता है?
Ritu, definitely, whenever technology is used, it improves efficiency, it improves productivity. So AI is also definitely going to do that at a much larger scale across the globe. And even in investments, people have started taking steps in adapting to AI and seeing what kind of benefits one could get from AI. So we are also taking some initial steps in terms of seeing how we can use AI for our research activities to produce, increase productivity, increase accuracy, etc. So these are just initial steps. I don't think we are in a position to really talk about it much at this point of time. So once we understand it fully, we are able to use it properly, then probably we'll have a better sense of how we are going to make use of all of that, and probably be able to at least discuss in public in terms of what kind of benefits we are likely to see. We are just taking very initial steps, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So, Harsha, if as a last, if I would like to ask, what would be your investment strategy for 2025, if you can summarize it?
Just because the calendar year has changed or is going to change, it's not going to be a different strategy. I think we all will have to continue focusing on the fundamentals, continue focusing on the risks around and the valuations that we are paying for each of those businesses. All of this will continue to be the center stage for any portfolio construction. And 2025 is not going to be any different. I think the challenges would have probably increased given that the valuations are no more cheap. So to that extent, you have to be extra careful in terms of whatever investments you are planning to make.
So, Vetri, I would ask you what all the key risks you see, for your investment strategy in upcoming year or going forward, probably.
अब आई वुड से आई थिंक मेरा जो एक रिस्क का एक इंटरप्रिटेशन है वो मैं हमेशा मानता हूँ कि वैल्यूएशंस आर इक्वल टू रिस्क। जब वैल्यूएशंस कम है मतलब कि रिस्क भी कम है, जब वैल्यूएशंस हाई है तो मतलब रिस्क भी ज्यादा है। जो सबसे बड़े रिस्क हैं जो मार्केट को डिसरप्ट करते हैं ये तो आगे से किसी को नहीं पता चलता है। व्हेन इट कम्स इट जस्ट कम्स एज अ शॉक एंड द मार्केट हैज टू रीएडजस्ट, और ये दोनों डायरेक्शन में होता है। इट इज नॉट जस्ट अ वन डायरेक्शन थिंग। I have seen how risk has come out of the blue in 2000. I have also seen how risk has come to the upside in, let's say, 2009 or 2020 after COVID, when governments intervened so significantly. So risk is two-dimensional. It is not one-dimensional, and it is very difficult to be able to forecast it in advance. But valuations are a good way for people to organize their affairs in terms of how much risk they want to take. और जैसे कि मैंने पहले कहा कि ये एक ऐसा माहौल है जहाँ पे आपको हमेशा कंपनीज के वैल्यूएशन भी देखने पड़ेंगे और ये भी देखना पड़ेगा कि क्या उसका cash flow, return on capital, is that healthy, which can allow it to achieve its long term objective. जो stories के ऊपर चल रहे हैं, there I would tend to be a lot more wary. Macro risk जो है सब जानते हैं, right now India is going through a little bit of a cyclical slowdown. It is a slightly volatile environment because we will have to see how US policy and some of the interventions they are talking about, how that will shape up. But these are all known risks and these can be continuously sort of repriced into the market. और जो equity investor हैं, they have to tolerate these risks. The biggest risk is the risk of doing things with a very short term focus. So that is the risk I think we should avoid by all means.
Okay. Thank you, Vetri. Thank you for giving us our insights, and thank you, Harsha. Here, I'll just go for a quickly rapid fire round, and these are the surprise questions for you both. Firstly, Harsha, one word to describe 2025 market: volatile, opportunistic, or resilience.
Volatile.
Okay. So Indian equity market, Vetri, we have seen a roller coaster ride. So where are we right now? The climb, the down, or the loop?
जैसे कि मैंने पहले कहा, I'm not a forecaster, so I have no clue where we are in the cycle, but all I know is the cycle will repeat.
Okay, so I can say the loop kind of a thing. Okay. What kind of a strategy in 2025 investors should adopt? Whether it would be a wealth creator kind of a year for the investors, or it should be a wealth protector kind of a strategy one should adopt? Harsha?
See, if you protect your wealth, you will be able to grow it. So I think protection is always very important.
Okay. Biggest market drivers in 2025, Vetri, FIIs flows or DIIs?
Wrong choice. Look at the supply.
Interesting. Okay. Vetri, what would be your stress buster after your tough day?
Uh, Not at the end of a tough day, but early morning, if I don't exercise or don't play badminton, it's always a difficult day.
Okay. And Harsha, for you, what is your guilty pleasure expense? Here we all talk about wealth creation. I'm talking about expenses.
I just enjoy traveling. So once in a year, whenever we get to take a lot of holidays, I do spend money on traveling. So I think that's a one big expense.
Okay. So thank you, Harsha, and thank you, Vetri, for giving us a insights and giving us a roadmap, like for our investors, how they can, travel 2025, or how they can, create their investment strategy for 2025. So a few points here, like, as we talked about कि Indian markets, in terms of global, अगर हम देखते हैं तो वो काफी resilient है. And going forward, also, we can see some kind of a volatility in the markets. In terms of investment strategy, I think diversified funds should be the go for 2025. And definitely, investors should reset their expectations, not for next year's. I think if they are investing in equity market, they should be very they should be having very reasonable expectation, not very extraordinary kind of expectations. And in terms of various sectors we have talked about, and I think a few sectors where we are positive, or we got a positive feedback, are like banking sector. Banking and financials are is one sector. IT is the another sector, and probably a domestic link sectors where we can see. But at the same time, consumption, we can see some kind of patchy thing. So yes, I am just wishing you both a happy new year in advance, and wishing all our audience a very happy new year. And invest in mutual funds and create long term wealth. Thank you so much, Vetri. Thank you so much, Harsha.
Thank you.
Thank you and have a great evening.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to never miss an update from Nirmal Bang.